This week's episode, we're talking about every founder's favorite topic, pricing. And what do you price your services? I've got my great friend Jeremy coming to join us, who's a negotiation specialist, but also shares his journey of entrepreneurship and how it wasn't as easy as he thought it was going to be, but also how he's found a way to really make it fit into his life. So if you're ready for a little bit of laughs, a little bit of reality, let's go. This is Overwhelmed and Over It, where success doesn't cost you your sanity. I'm your host, Gabs, and I bring you 10-ish minutes of real founder stories and real solutions without any fluff, so that way you can build a business without burning yourself out. Are you ready?
All right. I am so excited, Jeremy, that we're getting to have this conversation because one, my abs always hurt every time we get off the phone because we laugh so much. But then two, you're going to help me talk about the thing that every single one of us entrepreneurs freak out about. And it's, what do I charge and how do I price my services?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. You're right. We do laugh a lot. I'm Jeremy Barnyak. I'm the founder of Peak Negotiations. I primarily help people with salary negotiations and helping them get their best offers. But in becoming a solopreneur and starting my own business, I've come into proximity of other individuals who are struggling with that really hard question of what do I charge for what I'm doing? And it's really hard. I find it difficult for myself. I find it sometimes difficult to advise people on what they should charge because there's kind of a lot of academia around it. But once you start to talk about your own salary, your own money, you're often just getting started. It becomes a lot more personal. And I think that makes everything just a lot more difficult. So it can get very hairy. And for anybody struggling with this, you're definitely not alone. For anybody who's good at this, you are probably alone because it can be a real challenge.
That was one of the things that I really appreciated when we got connected from our friend Liam, when you and I hopped on the call was so many times I feel like when you talk to, and I'll put this in quotations, like experts in their field, they can almost make you feel silly or stupid or dumb for not knowing how to do what they do, or make you feel like you have to come work with me in order for you to get good at it. And there was just this way that you talked about pricing and negotiation that was like, no, this is hard. And especially like one of the things that stood out in our conversation was, especially when you're talking with entrepreneurs, it's not like with a job negotiation where you go back and forth and there's sometimes this negotiation. With pricing and selling your services, sometimes there isn't a negotiation and people just walk away and then you're like, "Oh shoot, what do I do next?" Any thoughts to share around that kind of conversation that we started a couple months ago?
Yeah, we'll pick it right back up where we left off. Yeah, I think it's interesting when we think about sort of negotiating as an entrepreneur with other people, especially if they're individuals. Many people on the other side of the table don't feel comfortable negotiating, so they don't negotiate, right? So it might be related to things like services where someone gives you a quote for mowing your lawn. Instead of trying to ask them if they'll do it for less money, and they might, you just don't hire them and you go find another person, or you don't do it because it's too expensive. And I think that that sort of process is really ingrained into individuals. So especially if you're a person or a coach or an individual working with individuals, I would say the biggest challenge to negotiations is not having a negotiation. And suddenly you ask for what you would like to earn, and the other side of the phone goes quiet. And what do you do from there? So that to me is probably the first hardest point that is difficult to overcome. And there might be some ways to avoid that. And it starts with two things. One is trying to understand what their point of view is on the value of the service that you're pitching to them. So if you don't have sort of defined prices that are out there on the internet, or if you're going into every conversation with a little bit of fluidity to what you're going to charge somebody, it's good to do a lot of exploration around sort of what their framework is for putting a value on what you're asking for. Because what can be challenging is maybe you're totally aligned. And when you're asking for a certain amount of money, they agree, like, yeah, that's great. Maybe they would pay more. And in the process, you find out that you can charge some more because they see a lot of value in your service, and you'd be underselling yourself if you simply went in with a price. Or last but not least, maybe you find out that there's a really big disconnect in your pricing. And that allows you to do a couple of things. One, you can take a step back and begin to have a dialogue around how they came to that number and why you think it could be more valuable than they're expecting it to be. Or you can reduce the services of, oh, when I work with people for that amount, I typically pare away this or this. And we begin to take away some of the things that you might be offering and aren't necessary to that individual. So instead of just negotiating on the price of your total offering, you begin to negotiate on what the offering is for the price that they're willing to pay. So I think it's really important when you're starting off and you really need to be winning as many deals as you can to get a sense of what the other side is putting a value on when it comes to your services and trying to work around that. Because if you're just throwing darts at a board, sometimes you'll hit it, sometimes you won't. Sometimes the phone will not be picked up for that conversation, and it can leave you feeling very confused.
Something I've really appreciated every conversation you and I have had is the way that you've approached your entire business. And I would love if you have any advice, because I think there's tons of us entrepreneurs who are early stage getting started who come into this, and I was very guilty of this myself, with this energetic of I have to make this work, I have to make money, I have to be successful at this. And I truly believe now 5 years into this journey that you actually end up making your journey harder by showing up that way. And I get this sense from you that you've always kind of shown up with similar how you're having that conversation with your clients. I typically do it this way, but I could do it this way. And I kind of get that same vibe from you around how you're running your business. Like, I'm doing work I love. I'm going to try something. If it doesn't work, I'll try something different. But it very much hasn't been this like forceful, I have to make it work. And I'm curious if you think that that has tied into the success that you have seen in your founder journey.
Yeah, I think it's sort of how do you define success, right? Which is a bit of a, cop out here. But when I was thinking about getting into this salary negotiation space and launching off on my own, that was after spending more than a decade working in corporate America. So it was very different. And like a good MBA corporate person, I sat down and wrote my business case and sort of what do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? And things I knew, things I didn't know, what were risks, what were, areas I was confident in, but I was very clear about kind of what I was trying to achieve. So I was trying to earn money, but at the same time, I was also trying to strike more joy and balance in my life where I just wasn't seeing it in the corporate space where I was operating. And that has been super helpful for me just to kind of come back to of like, well, what am I trying to do? I'm not trying to make $1 million a year. If I make $1 million a year, I would argue I have strayed from what I want because it would imply that I'm probably working more than I should be. Full disclosure, I'm not close to getting there, so I'm not at risk of going outside of my original goals. But it wasn't just about sort of money, and it wasn't just about optimizing that outcome. And I look at that a lot in sort of how I run my business as well. There are things that I really like to do. I love to talk to people. I love working with individuals to help them achieve their value and see their value. But it kind of stops there, frankly. I don't really like doing the books, so I hire someone to do it. I love a bit of help on LinkedIn and I write my content, but I'm really bad at posting it. So Liam, our mutual friend, is my, river guide on doing that and he holds me accountable. So Liam took a week off and I noticed when he wasn't there. I was scrambling to get
You're like,
stuff out the door.
wait.
So
Yeah.
I need to be thoughtful about kind of like what are the things that I like doing? What are the things that I'm good at? Trying to lean into those areas. And then I've been sort of proactive about letting go of the things that I'm not particularly passionate or particularly good at that I know that are critical to my business. So I think that's like point number one. And then the other point kind of ties back to negotiations and whether it's like my mantra lends well to negotiations or I've become this way because of negotiations, which is I just don't believe in hard and fast rules. Like never split the difference, always negotiate. Like, I don't know, sometimes split the difference. Like maybe we don't negotiate on occasion. And that has happened in my life. I've had lots of deals that have come down in the middle. And I've had times when clients of mine have not wanted to negotiate for personal reasons, like putting their spouse through an amount of stress after a long job search. And like, I get it. Maybe not in this
Yeah.
chapter of your life. So I'm not going to sit there and tell them why they're making a big mistake. I'm going to be supportive of it. And I just, I guess I just don't feel that firmly about anything. It doesn't have to be one way. And sticking to what is, my values and what do I want to achieve is important, but kind of how I get there, I'm not as hung up on. So like, you want to pay me a percent? Great. You want to pay me a flat fee? Great. You don't want to pay me? We'll talk about it. So it's, yeah, maybe it's a little wishy-washy, but I try and be generally pretty fluid with things because most of the time our plans go out the window as soon as we make them. And I was talking to an early stage founder a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me firmly about how she was going to price things and how she was going to do stuff. And I was like, I want you to be aware that this is probably not going to be how it plays out. So
Yeah.
just want to set
Just
expectations that like,
right. Give yourself that expectation now. It'll set you off better in the long run.
yeah, like I think it's great to have a starting point. Like it's great to come in and say, this is how I plan to do it. I think it's also equally great to say, this isn't working or this is a different situation, and not for the sake of sticking to your plan, foregoing your bigger objective.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Looking back now, anything you would tell early stage Jeremy as you were getting his business off the ground that you would do different?
I really nailed it. No. I would say that there are two things that have been like really, really important to my success. I want to acknowledge that people don't always have them, and nor do you have to wait for it to be perfect to do it. But I anticipated a lot more business coming my way, a lot more quickly. I was like, I have a huge network. People love me. I'm going to be doing this like all day, every day. And the first few months were like very, very quiet. I think for a lot of people find that, yeah, it is harder. Things take longer. Sales cycles
Mhm.
are more prolonged than they think you are. People that you think might be clients immediately may not be. And that's not to scare people away from being entrepreneurs, but I think it's to say like, if you don't see immediate success, don't don't fold. And then the second piece, which is like around the not folding piece, which is I have the support of a wonderful wife and her stability within working within corporate America that allows me to kind of take this longer, slower pathway to where I want to get to. Because if you are counting on this being cash flow positive to your previous salary in the first 4 weeks, you're probably setting yourself up for failure. So it can be very challenging, and that's not to not do it, but just being sort of realistic about, yeah, it's probably going to be a bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be. Some of the things I thought might be easier are not as easy as they're going to be, especially if you don't like selling. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a sale. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
But
Well,
it's been a great journey, and I think everybody at some point in their lives should try and do something on their own. And I've seen entrepreneurs come into entrepreneurship, do it, and then go back to corporate with a newfound appreciation for some of the things that are related to corporations. And then there's other people who become entrepreneurs and they're like, I can't imagine going back to corporations. So I think there's a good, healthy life lesson kind of on either end and either outcome.
entrepreneurship teaches you so much about yourself. I think it's this massive learning lesson around awareness of you and who you are, who you want to be, that one way or the other, it's going to be a positive investment in yourself and your life and what you choose to do in the next chapter, the next stage. There's no right, wrong, or indifferent answer there. It's just appreciating the lessons you get on this journey.
Absolutely. You will learn a lot regardless of what it ends up with.
Yeah.
That's all for this week's episode of Overwhelmed and Over It. I know being a founder can feel lonely, but you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. If you're craving real talk with other entrepreneurs who get exactly what you're going through, join us in the Brave Starts monthly Q&A circle. It's our judgment-free zone where no question is too basic, too messy, because trust me, we've all been there. You can grab your free spot at thebravestart.com. And please make sure we're connected on LinkedIn. I share daily reminders that the entrepreneurship roller coaster is totally normal. You're not the only one feeling overwhelmed. I'm your host, Gabs, and until next week, remember, building a business is hard enough. Let's not make it harder by doing it alone. I'll catch you in the next episode.